country track. And I didn't think once he'd be sending me a country track. I thought it'd be pop rock.
Sure.
Like
I felt we were big rivals. You know, we were the Beatles. They were the Rolling Stones.
Do you feel that
Ringo Starr doesn't waste words. Never has. While other Beatles philosophized about art and meaning, Ringo just played the drums and told the truth. Simple, direct, honest. And when he didn't like something, he said it.
The only problem I have with it, that a lot of the stuff they're selling is sort of stuff from now.
No corporate smile, no diplomatic dodge, just pure, unfiltered opinion from a man who helped change music forever. Most people remember Ringo as the funny one, the easygoing Beatle, the guy who sang Yellow Submarine and cracked jokes during press conferences.
It's just your life.
Yes, but I have to rely on people like you now.
Why is that?
I have no memory.
Oh, you.
But beneath that charm lived a serious musician with serious opinions. He knew what worked and what didn't, and he wasn't afraid to call out albums that missed the mark, even when those albums were considered classics by everyone else. These 7 albums weren't just records Ringo disliked. They were examples of everything he thought was wrong with rock music. Overproduction, pretension, losing the groove for the sake of cleverness, taking yourself too seriously. For a drummer who built his reputation on feel and pocket, these albums committed musical crimes he couldn't forgive. Ringo never apologized for his tastes, and these albums show exactly why. If you love honest takes from rock royalty, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling us which overrated album you secretly can't stand. Let's count down the 7 rock albums Ringo Starr hated most. 7. Brain Salad Surgery. Progressive rock and Ringo Starr were never going to get along, and Brain Salad Surgery, released in 1973, represented everything Ringo despised about the genre. 20-minute songs, classical adaptations, synthesizers trying to sound like orchestras.
Thanks. I hope not. I think it's all part of where we came from as well.
Keith Emerson's fingers flying across keyboards while the groove died somewhere in the complexity. Ringo heard it and shook his head. The album opened with Jerusalem, a classical piece stretched and twisted into rock opera territory. Then came Tarkus continuations and the 30-minute epic Carnival 9. Technical? Absolutely. Impressive? Maybe. But danceable? Not a chance. Ringo once said in an interview, "I don't understand music you can't tap your foot to." What's the point? For a drummer who believed in serving the song, Brain Salad Surgery was musical self-indulgence. Carl Palmer's drum solos were technically perfect, but emotionally cold. The rhythms shifted constantly, making it impossible to find a pocket and stay there. Everything was about showing off, about proving how many time signatures you could cram into one song. Ringo came from a different school. The Beatles wrote complex music too, but it always had heart. A Day in the Life was experimental, but it still made you feel something. Brain Salad Surgery made you think, maybe even impressed you, but it didn't make you move. And for Ringo, that was the ultimate sin. Music without soul was just noise with a diploma. He never bought the hype, and he never pretended to. 6. The Soft Parade. Ringo loved the Doors' early work.
Peppermint, Whiskers, chocolate candy.
Light My Fire had a groove. Break On Through had energy. But The Soft Parade, released in 1969, betrayed everything that made the Doors dangerous. Suddenly there were horns, strings, studio polish. Jim Morrison's raw poetry got buried under layers of orchestration that nobody asked for. The title track stretched over 8 minutes, but it wandered without purpose. Brass sections popped up randomly. The production tried to make the Doors sound like a lounge act. Touch Me became a hit, but it felt manufactured, calculated. Where was the darkness? Where was the edge? Ringo later remarked, "They took a band that sounded like a garage and made them sound like a hotel lobby."
That brings it up. I don't ever let them just lay in the mud. Yeah.
What frustrated Ringo most was the drums. John Densmore was a jazz drummer with a real feel, but on this album, he got drowned out. The mix pushed him back, letting the arrangements take over. For Ringo, who fought George Martin tooth and nail to keep his drums up front, this was musical cowardice. The rhythm section is the foundation. You don't bury it under violins. The Doors were trying to be legitimate, trying to prove they were more than a psychedelic bar band. But in chasing respectability, they lost their danger. Morrison's lyrics about Native Americans and political chaos felt forced, not felt. Ringo preferred the raw, 3-minute Morrison who screamed rather than philosophized. The soft parade was the Doors wearing a suit, and Ringo hated suits in rock and roll. 5. Tales from Topographic Oceans. If brain salad surgery annoyed Ringo, Tales from Topographic Oceans enraged him. Released in 1973, this double album featured 4 songs, just 4. Each one stretched past 18 minutes. The concept was based on Hindu scriptures, the musicianship was flawless, and the groove was absolutely nowhere to be found. Yes had always been technical, but this was too much. Rick Wakeman played 10 keyboards at once. Steve Howe's guitars spiraled into jazz fusion territory. The rhythms changed every 30 seconds. And Chris Squire's bass, while impressive, never sat still long enough to let you breathe. Ringo once told a journalist, "I listened to 20 minutes and I still couldn't figure out where the one was."
It's helped me because, boom, boom, ba, ba, ba. Just so the handicap is worthwhile.
For a drummer whose entire philosophy was built on solid timekeeping, this album was chaos. Bill Bruford's successor, Alan White, was a great drummer, but even he couldn't save songs that refused to settle into a groove. The Revealing Science of God went on for 22 minutes without ever giving you something to hold on to. It was impressive in the way watching someone solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded is impressive. Technically amazing, emotionally empty. Ringo believed music should connect, not confuse. The Beatles made Sgt. Pepper and the White Album both experimental and ambitious. But even at their weirdest, the Beatles never forgot the listener. Tales from Topographic Oceans felt like Yes forgot anyone was listening at all. It was music for musicians, by musicians, about music theory. Ringo wanted none of it. Give him a backbeat and a melody. That's all rock and roll ever needed. 4. The Wall. This one surprised people. Pink Floyd were supposed to be untouchable. The Wall, released in 1979, was hailed as a masterpiece, a rock opera about isolation, fame, and madness. Roger Waters poured his soul into it. The production was immaculate. And Ringo Starr thought it was miserable, overblown, and emotionally exhausting in the worst way. Ringo's problem wasn't with the concept. He understood darkness. He'd lived through Beatlemania and watched John Lennon's spiral. But The Wall didn't just explore pain, it wallowed in it. 26 songs of anger, self-pity, and blame. Another brick in the wall. Part 2 became a massive hit, but the rest of the album felt like therapy nobody asked to sit through. The drums on The Wall were stiff, programmed sounding, lifeless. There was no swing, no feel, just cold precision. For Ringo, who believed drums should breathe like a heartbeat, this was unforgivable. The whole album felt mechanical, despite being about human suffering. Even Nick Mason, a drummer Ringo respected, couldn't bring warmth to these songs. Ringo once said, "Music should make you feel better, not worse." The Wall was 2 hours of feeling worse. It was important, sure. Ambitious, absolutely. But it wasn't fun. It wasn't joyful. And for Ringo, who sang Octopus's Garden and With a Little Help from My Friends, joy mattered. Rock and roll was supposed to lift you up even when it talked about darkness. The Wall just dragged you down and left you there. 3. White Light, White Heat. The Velvet Underground were cool. Everyone said so. Critics worshipped them. Bands cited them as influences. But Ringo Starr listened to White Light/White Heat in 1968 and heard nothing but noise. Not the good kind of noise, just chaos without purpose. feedback without melody, aggression without groove. The title track assaulted your ears for under 3 minutes, which was merciful. But then came Sister Ray. 17 minutes of the same 3 chords, out-of-tune guitars, and Lou Reed talk singing about drugs and depravity. John Cale's organ screamed like a wounded animal. The drums bashed without rhythm. It wasn't experimental. It was unfinished. Ringo appreciated raw music. The Beatles started in Hamburg playing dirty rock and roll. But even at their roughest, they had songs. White Light/White Heat felt like a band that gave up on songwriting and called it art. The production was deliberately terrible. The mix buried everything under distortion. And worst of all, there was no backbeat you could follow. For Ringo, drumming meant keeping time, creating a pocket for everyone else to live in. Maureen Tucker played standing up, hitting floor toms with mallets. It was minimal, which could work. But here it just sounded confused. Ringo later joked, "I've heard better rhythm at a train station." The Velvet Underground influenced punk, experimental rock, and alternative music. Good for them. But Ringo never understood why anyone would want to sound that bad on purpose. 2. Trout Mask Replica. Trout Mask Replica is one of those albums critics called genius. Released in 1969, it was 28 tracks of avant-garde insanity. Captain Beefheart growled and barked over rhythms that seemed random. Guitars played different songs at the same time. Time signatures collapsed into themselves. And Ringo Starr hated every second of it. This wasn't music, it was an endurance test. Songs like Dachau Blues and Hair Pie, Bake One sounded like 5 bands playing in 5 different rooms while someone recorded through a wall. The drumming was intentionally off. The bass and guitar never agreed on what key they were in. Beefheart's vocals sounded like a man yelling at furniture. Ringo tried. He really did. He believed in giving every album a fair shot. But after 10 minutes of Trout Mask Replica, he turned it off. He later told friends, "Life's too short to pretend you like something that sounds like a mistake." And that's what this album was. A mistake that somehow got pressed onto vinyl and called revolutionary. The musicians on the album were apparently very talented, forced to learn incredibly complex parts. But complexity isn't the same as quality. You can make something difficult that's still unlistenable. Ringo proved you could play simple and be legendary. His drum part on Come Together was just a basic groove, but it was perfect. Captain Beefheart proved you could play complicated and bore people to tears. Ringo chose simplicity and soul. Beefheart chose chaos and pretension. 1. Metal Machine Music. This is the one. The album Ringo Starr hated more than any other. Metal Machine Music, released in 1975, wasn't even music. It was 64 minutes of guitar feedback. No drums, no vocals, no melody, no rhythm. Just 4 sides of screeching, howling electronic noise. Lou Reed claimed it was art. Ringo called it a joke that went too far. Reed had made great albums. Transformers was brilliant. Berlin was dark but real. But Metal Machine Music felt like Reed flipping off his record label and his fans at the same time. Stores accepted it as a return after customers complained. Critics were divided between calling it genius and calling it garbage. Ringo didn't hesitate. It was garbage. There was nothing to latch onto. No beat to follow. No song to hum. Just endless, abrasive noise that gave you a headache. Ringo believed in experimentation. The Beatles made Revolution 9, which was weird and abstract. But even that had texture, variation, purpose. Metal Machine Music was one note screaming for an hour. Ringo later said in an interview, "If that's the future of rock and roll, count me out." He meant it. For a man who dedicated his life to rhythm, groove, and making people feel good, Metal Machine Music was the opposite of everything music should be. It was selfish. It was hostile. And worst of all, it was boring. Lou Reed wanted to make an anti-album. He succeeded. And Ringo Starr wanted nothing to do with it. Some things are ahead of their time. Other things are just mistakes. This was a mistake. Ringo Starr never pretended to like what he didn't. From prog rock excess to avant-garde noise, these 7 albums represented everything he thought was wrong with rock. Too clever, too cold, too far from the beat. His tastes stayed simple, honest, and rooted in groove. What album do you secretly hate that everyone loves? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more brutal honesty from rock's biggest legends. Peace and love.